Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Take a moment to get comfortable wherever you are. Let your shoulders relax and let the day gently fall away. You don't need to do anything right now. Just listen and let the story unfold at its own pace. Whenever you're ready, we'll begin.
Once upon a time in L.A., under the lavender skies of Los Angeles, when the air still carried the scent of orange blossoms from quiet backyard trees, and the evening stretched long and golden like a slow exhale, there was a small neighborhood tucked gently beneath the Hollywood hills. It was not the loud part of Los Angeles. Not the flashing lights or the red carpets. This was the part where porch lights glowed softly at dusk, where palm trees swayed in an easy rhythm, like they had nowhere important to be. Where the sun melted slowly into the Pacific, brushing the sky with lavender, peach, and warm rose. And if you had been there, just as the day surrendered to evening, you would have felt it. That softness, that quiet magic that only L.A. knows how to hold when it decides to be gentle. In a small Spanish-style house with clay tiles and a wooden door painted a faded blue, lived a man named Elias. Now Elias was not famous. In Los Angeles, that made him somewhat extraordinary. He worked at a small bookstore in Silver Lake, the kind of bookstore with uneven wooden floors and handwritten staff recommendations tucked into the shelves, the kind where old jazz played softly in the background and dust motes floated lazily through beams of afternoon light. Elias loved quiet things. He loved the way the city felt at 6:12 p.m. when traffic began to soften and the sky turned honey gold. He loved the distant hum of cars along Sunset Boulevard, not loud, just present. Like ocean waves you don't have to look at to know they're there. Every evening, after closing the bookstore, Elias would walk home instead of driving. He would pass jacaranda trees dropping purple blossoms onto the sidewalks. He would pass small taco stands where families laughed together under string lights. He would pass old movie theaters, their neon signs glowing gently like fireflies caught in glass. And always, he would pause for a moment when he could see the city stretching out below him. Los Angeles, from a distance, does not shout. It shimmers. And on one particular evening, the kind where the marine layer rolled in like a soft gray blanket from the Pacific, something shifted. Elias noticed a piano melody drifting from an open window. It wasn't loud. It wasn't showy. It was simple. A slow jazz tune that felt like warm tea on a cool night. He followed it, not because he meant to, but because the melody seemed to wrap gently around him and guide his steps. The music came from a small bungalow with climbing jasmine curling along the porch railings. The scent was sweet and calming. The porch light glowed amber, and there at the window sat a woman playing piano. Her name was Mara. Now Mara had once dreamed of big concert halls, of bright stages and applause that echoed like ocean thunder. But life, as it often does in L.A., had rearranged her path gently rather than dramatically. She now played simply because she loved the way notes lingered in evening air, because music in Lowe's Angels feels different at night. It stretches, it floats. It becomes part of the breeze. Elias did not knock that first evening. He simply stood beneath the jacaranda tree and listened. And the remarkable thing was this: nothing rushed. Not the melody, not the wind, not even time. Lowe's Angels, despite its reputation, can be incredibly patient. The next evening, Elias walked the same route. The piano returned. A different tune this time, slower, softer. He closed his eyes and let it wash over him. The distant sound of waves from Santa Monica seemed to join the rhythm. Somewhere, a car passed. Somewhere, someone laughed gently. But here, beneath this window, the world felt small in the best possible way. By the third evening, Mara noticed him. Not in an alarming way, in a curious way. She had seen the silhouette beneath the tree. A quiet figure who never interrupted, who never clapped. Who simply stood and listened as though the music were something sacred. So she changed her song. She played something lighter, something hopeful. And beneath the jacaranda tree, Elias smiled. Because sometimes in Lowe's Angels, a city built on spectacle, the most powerful thing is being quietly seen. Days passed like warm breezes. The marine layer rolled in and out. Sunsets painted the sky in watercolor strokes. And eventually, one evening, as crickets began their gentle chorus, Elias did knock. Not loudly, just a soft tap against the wooden door. When Mara opened it, she did not seem surprised. "Would you like to come in?" she asked. Her voice sounded like her piano playing, calm, unhurried, kind. And so he stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of sandalwood and old sheet music. A single lamp cast golden light across the piano keys. Outside, the city hummed in the distance, but here, it felt wrapped in velvet. They didn't speak much that first night. They didn't need to. Mara played. Elias listened. And somewhere between one melody and the next, something steady formed. Not the rush of a Hollywood romance, not fireworks, not drama, just companionship. The kind that grows like palm trees, slow, resilient, reaching upward without asking for attention. Soon it became a ritual, bookstore by day, a piano by night. Sometimes they would walk together down quiet streets, the scent of night-blooming jasmine drifting through the air. They would sit on a bench overlooking the city lights. Lowe's Angels below them shimmered like a sky full of fallen stars. Cars moved like quiet rivers of red and white. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed briefly, then faded. And Elias would say, "It's loud down there." Mara would smile and reply, "Only if you listen for noise." So they listened for softness instead. For wind in palm fronds, for distant waves brushing the shore, for the hush that settles over LA after midnight when even ambition sleeps. Years passed gently. The bookstore remained. The piano remained. The jacaranda tree grew taller. And in a city famous for reinvention, they discovered something rare: constancy. Not because nothing changed, but because they chose to move slowly. to savor sunsets, to let music fill empty spaces, to watch marine clouds roll in without rushing them away. And sometimes, on especially quiet evenings, when the sky turned that particular shade of lavender that only Lowe's Angels seems to know, they would sit together on the porch. No music, no words, just the glow of porch light and city shimmer. Once upon a time in LA. They discovered that magic does not always live in spotlights. Sometimes it lives in open windows, in soft jazz drifting through warm air, in footsteps that return night after night. And as the Pacific wind carried the scent of salt and jasmine across the hills, the city below them exhaled, slowly, gently, like it was finally ready for sleep. And if you listen closely tonight, wherever you are, you might almost hear it, a faint piano. A distant ocean, palm trees swaying in easy rhythm, Lowe's Angels whispering good night, where the city lights whisper good night. Lowe's Angels has a second personality. Most people never meet it. They know the daytime version, bright, ambitious, shimmering with possibility. They know the traffic on the 101, the rush along Sunset Boulevard, the sun flashing against glass towers downtown. But at night, LA becomes something else entirely. The air cools, the palm trees slow. The sky softens into a deep velvet blue that feels almost endless. And if you happen to be awake, but not restless, you can hear the city exhale. Elias and Mara had begun to understand this quieter version of Lowe's Angels. They learned that if you walked far enough uphill, above the gentle curve of neighborhoods, above the distant murmur of traffic, you could see the glow of the city without hearing its urgency. On one particular evening, the marine layer rolled in early from the Pacific. It came like a soft gray blanket, draping itself over rooftops and slipping through streets. The lights below blurred slightly, turning into halos of gold and white. Mara closed the lid of her piano gently. "Let's walk," she said. Elias nodded. They stepped outside into the cool night air. The scent of jasmine was stronger now, mixing with something faintly salty drifting in from the direction of Santa Monica Pier, miles away but somehow always present. Lowe's Angels is strange like that. Even when you cannot see the ocean, you can feel that it's there. They walked without speaking much. Their footsteps moved in quiet rhythm along the sidewalk. A stray cat crossed their path and disappeared beneath a parked car. Somewhere, wind chimes stirred lazily on a nearby porch. The city did not feel empty. It felt resting. As they reached a small overlook near Griffith Park, the skyline spread before them like a constellation laid gently upon the earth. The famous white letters of the Hollywood sign rested quietly against the hillside, no longer bold and demanding, just present, like an old landmark watching over everything. Mara sat on the low stone wall. Elias joined her. Below them, headlights moved slowly along distant freeways, soft rivers of light flowing without hurry. "Do you ever think," Elias said quietly, "that the city dreams?" Mara smiled. "I think it does," she answered. I think it dreams about all the people who came here hoping for something, and all the ones who stayed because they found something quieter instead. The wind moved gently through the dry grass behind them. Somewhere in the distance, faint laughter floated upward and then faded away. Los Angeles, despite its reputation, holds millions of small, peaceful moments like this, unnoticed, unrecorded, but deeply real. They stayed there for a long time, long enough for the sky to darken fully, long enough for the first faint stars to appear above the city's glow. And eventually, when the air grew cooler, they walked back down. But something had shifted again, not dramatically, not urgently, just a subtle deepening. The next morning arrived softly. Los Angeles mornings, especially in certain neighborhoods, feel like they were painted in watercolor, muted, gentle. Sunlight filtering through palm fronds. Elias opened the bookstore as usual. The bell above the door chimed faintly. Inside, the scent of paper and wood welcomed him like an old friend. Outside, the city stretched awake, coffee shops filling, sidewalks warming, cyclists gliding past. But Elias carried the night with him. He recommended books more thoughtfully that day. He moved more slowly between shelves. Because once you've seen Los Angeles from above, once you felt its quiet pulse after midnight, you begin to notice how much calm lives beneath the surface. That evening, Mara played something new. Not jazz this time, something softer, slower. The melody drifted through the open window and slipped into the lavender sky. Elias didn't stand beneath the jacaranda tree tonight. He stepped inside immediately. He sat beside her on the piano bench. And instead of listening from a distance, he let the music surround him fully. Outside, the neighborhood lights glowed warm and steady. The world beyond LA might have been loud. It might have been busy. But here, in this small room with sandalwood air and gentle piano notes, time stretched like a calm horizon. Mara finished the song and let the final note linger. Silence followed. Not empty silence, full silence. The kind that feels like a held breath, peaceful and complete. "Do you hear it?" she asked softly. "Hear what?" "The quiet between things." Elias listened, and he did. He heard the space between distant cars, the pause between wind gusts, the stillness between heartbeats. Los Angeles is often described as a city chasing dreams. But there, in that moment, it felt like a city resting inside one. Later that night, they stepped onto the porch again. The marine layer had cleared. The stars were faint but visible. The city shimmered gently below, no longer calling for attention, just glowing, just being. And if you had walked past that small Spanish-style house, if you had slowed your steps and looked up, you might have seen two quiet silhouettes beneath a porch light, not searching, not striving, just breathing in the cool California air. Because once upon a time in LA, two people discovered that the real magic of the city was not in becoming something grand. It was in noticing something small, a melody drifting through an open window, a skyline resting beneath velvet sky, a quiet voice asking you to listen between the noise. And as the night deepened, as palm trees swayed in slow rhythm, as the distant ocean continued its steady, patient song. Lowe's angels whispered again, not loudly, not urgently, soft jazz, ocean air, and a midnight promise. There are nights in Lowe's Angels when the city seems to loosen its shoulders, when even the freeways soften, when the air carries that cool, salt-kissed hush drifting inland from the Pacific. On one of those nights, Mara closed her piano a little earlier than usual. "Let's go to the water," she said. Elias didn't ask which part. In Lowe's Angels, the ocean is not a destination. It's a presence. They drove west, windows cracked open just enough for the breeze to slip through. The streets were calm now. Traffic lights changed patiently along Santa Monica Boulevard, glowing red, then green, then red again, even when no cars were waiting. As they passed through quiet neighborhoods, porch lights hummed softly. A late-night cafe still flickered awake. Somewhere, a radio played low classic rock from an open car window, fading as they turned toward the coast. When they reached the edge of Santa Monica, the air shifted, cooler, wider. Breathing felt easier there. As they parked near the sand, not far from where the lights of the Santa Monica Pier shimmered gently over dark water like reflections from another world. But they didn't walk toward the pier. They walked the opposite direction, toward the quieter stretch of shoreline where the city sounds dissolve into waves. The ocean at night is different than during the day. In daylight, it sparkles. At night, it whispers. The tide rolled in steady rhythm, folding over itself again and again. Silver moonlight traced a soft path across the water. Mara slipped off her shoes first. Elias followed. The sand was cool beneath their feet, fine, soft, grounding. They walked slowly along the shoreline, letting the foam brush their ankles before retreating again. No rush, no destination, just movement. The Pacific stretched endlessly before them, a dark velvet expanse. Far out on the horizon, a single boat light blinked patiently. "You can't see the edge," Elias said quietly. Mara nodded. "That's what I like about it." Lowe's Angels behind them was glowing softly now, not loud, not demanding, just present. The Ferris wheel at the pier turned lazily in the distance, its lights rotating in slow patterns of blue and gold. They found a place to sit where the sand dipped slightly, sheltered from the faint breeze. And for a long time they did nothing at all. The waves kept their steady rhythm. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Breathing with the ocean is easy, almost automatic. Mara leaned back on her hands and closed her eyes. "Do you ever think," she said softly, "that this is the real Lowe's Angels?" Elias listened to the water before answering. "I think this is the part people forget." A gull called faintly in the distance. A soft wind moved across the sand, erasing footprints little by little. Lowe's Angels is often described as a place of reinvention, of chasing, of striving. But sitting there beneath moonlight, beside endless water, it felt like a place of return. Return to stillness. Return to simplicity. Return to the quiet spaces inside yourself. Mara began humming, not a full melody, just a gentle tune carried on the rhythm of the waves. Elias didn't recognize it, and that made it even better. It wasn't meant for performance. It wasn't meant for an audience. It was meant for the night. The ocean continued its patient song. Farther up the beach, a couple walked hand in hand, their laughter soft and fleeting. A lifeguard tower stood still and white against the sand, empty, resting until morning. The moon rose higher. The time stretched thin and easy. Eventually, the breeze cooled further, brushing their shoulders with a reminder that night was deepening. They stood slowly. No sudden movements, no abrupt endings. As they walked back toward the car, Elias glanced once more at the horizon. There is something about standing beside the Pacific Ocean in California, something grounding and expansive at the same time. It reminds you that even in a city built on dreams, there is something older, steadier, unmoved by applause or ambition. Back in the car, they didn't turn on the radio. The silence felt complete. They drove along the coastline briefly, passing the quiet curve of Pacific Coast Highway. The road hugged the dark ocean, headlights tracing gentle arcs ahead of them. Above, the sky was clearer now. Stars faint but steady. As they re-entered the city, the glow returned gradually, streetlights first, then windows, then distant towers. But something had changed again. The city no longer felt like something to navigate. It felt like something to float within. When they arrived back at the small Spanish-style house beneath the hills, the jacaranda blossoms rested undisturbed along the sidewalk. The porch light glowed amber. Inside, the piano waited quietly. Mara paused before opening the door. "Promise me something," she said gently. "What?" "That no matter how busy this place gets, no matter how loud it tries to be, we'll always come back to the water." Elias looked toward the faint glimmer of the ocean, miles away but still present in the air. "I promise." And in Los Angeles, a city famous for dramatic promises, this one was small, steady, real. They stepped inside. The night settled deeper. The city continued its distant hum. And far away, beyond the lights and hills and winding streets, the Pacific kept breathing in and out, steady as ever. If you listen closely now, you might hear it too. Waves folding gently into sand, a faint melody carried by salt air. Palm trees shifting softly against a midnight sky. Once upon a time in LA, two people learned that even in a city of endless motion, there is always a place where the world slows, where the ocean speaks in whispers, where the lights shimmer instead of shout. And where, if you let it, sleep comes as gently as the tide. When rain falls soft over the hills, rain in Los Angeles does not arrive loudly. It doesn't crash or roar the way it does in other cities. It comes carefully, almost shy. On the evening the rain began, the sky had been the color of pale silver since morning. The hills above the neighborhood blurred slightly, wrapped in mist that clung to eucalyptus trees and telephone wires. Elias noticed it first at the bookstore. The usual golden California sunlight was missing. Instead, soft gray light filtered through the front windows. Customers moved more slowly between shelves. Even voices seemed quieter, as though the air itself were listening. By late afternoon, the first drops touched the pavement outside. Not heavy, not urgent, just small, deliberate taps against the sidewalk. When Elias locked up for the evening, he stepped into air that smelled entirely new. Wet concrete, fresh earth, a faint citrus scent from the trees lining the street. Lowe's Angels after rain smells clean, almost unfamiliar, like the city has rinsed away its edges. He walked home without an umbrella. The droplets rested lightly on his jacket, cool but not uncomfortable. Streetlights reflected on damp asphalt, turning ordinary roads into soft rivers of gold and amber. Cars passed more slowly along Sunset Boulevard, their headlights diffused into halos by mist. Up in the hills, clouds wrapped around the quiet slopes near Griffith Observatory, softening its familiar silhouette. When he reached the small Spanish-style house, the porch light glowed warmer than usual against the gray sky. Inside, Mara was already playing. But tonight, the piano sounded different. Rain changes acoustics. The notes felt rounder, softer, as if the air itself were cushioning each tone. Elias stepped in quietly and closed the door behind him. The gentle patter of rain continued against clay roof tiles above. Mara didn't stop playing when she saw him. Instead, she shifted into a slower melody, one that drifted like falling water. Outside, the jacaranda tree leaves shimmered under droplets. Rain slid gently down the window glass in thin, wandering lines. There is something about rain in Lowe's Angels that feels intimate, perhaps because it's rare. And perhaps because the city doesn't quite know what to do with it. Freeways slow, cafes fill, neighbors pause on porches, surprised and softened by it. Mara let the final note linger and closed the piano lid halfway. "Listen," she whispered. Elias did. The rain was steady now, not heavy, not stormy, just consistent. A soft percussion on rooftops, a faint hiss as tires moved over wet pavement. Somewhere down the block, a wind chime rang gently, stirred by damp breeze. "It makes everything feel smaller," Mara said. "You're closer," Elias replied. She smiled. They made tea chamomile for her, black tea with honey for him. The kitchen window fogged slightly from rising steam. Outside, the street shimmered beneath lamplight. From inside, Lowe's Angels looked cinematic, but not in a dramatic way, in a quiet way. Like a memory forming in real time. They moved to the living room and sat near the front window. The rain blurred the world beyond the glass into soft shapes and muted color. Palm trees bent slightly in the breeze. The car passed slowly, water trailing behind its tires like silver ribbon. Far off, thunder rolled once faint and distant, like the ocean clearing its throat. Mara rested her head lightly against Elia's shoulder. Neither of them spoke for a while. Rain has a way of filling silence without disturbing it. Minutes stretched gently. The rhythm outside was steady. Drip, tap, hush. Somewhere in the distance, near the direction of Hollywood Bowl, a siren flickered briefly, then faded. Even the city's urgency seemed softened by water. After a while, Mara stood and reopened the piano. This time, she played something almost like a lullaby. Simple chords, uncomplicated, the kind that feels familiar even if you've never heard it before. The rain accompanied her naturally, as if it had been waiting for this duet. Outside, small rivers formed along the curb. Reflections of streetlights shimmered and broke with each falling drop. Los Angeles was glowing differently now. Not bright, not bold, but warm, wrapped in gray and gold. Elias closed his eyes. He could smell the rain through the slightly cracked window, that clean mineral scent rising from pavement. He could hear each note blending with water. He could feel the calm settle deeper, like layers of a blanket being pulled gently over the evening. "Stay," Mara murmured softly, though she wasn't asking him to remain physically. She meant stay in this moment, stay in this softness, stay in this slowed-down version of the city. And he did. The rain continued for hours, not flooding, not fierce, just present. By midnight, the neighborhood had gone nearly silent. Windows darkened one by one. Streetlights reflected endlessly in puddles. The hills were hidden completely now, wrapped in mist. Los Angeles had become a watercolor painting. Before bed, they stepped out onto the porch for just a moment. The rain had eased to a fine drizzle. The air felt cool and clean against their skin. Somewhere beyond the cloud cover, the moon waited patiently. The city lights shimmered through fog like distant stars. Mara reached for Elias' hand. "You know," she said quietly, "this is my favorite version of LA." He looked at the blurred skyline. At its quietest, at its softest. They stood there a moment longer, breathing in petrichor and salt and night air. Then they stepped back inside, closing the door gently behind them. The rain kept falling, steady, patient, like a lullaby written just for the hills. And as Los Angeles rested beneath its rare winter shower, as palm trees bowed slightly under silver droplets as the freeways hummed low and calm, the whole city seemed to drift, not chasing, not striving, just resting in the sound of rain. Once upon a time in LA, even the busiest streets learned how to be still. And if you listen now, you might hear it. Rain tapping softly against tile roofs. The piano humming in a warm living room. The distant city breathing slower than usual. And somewhere beneath gray clouds and golden streetlights, Los Angeles whispering, "Sleep now." When morning turns the hills to gold, the rain did not last forever. It never does in Los Angeles. Sometime just before dawn, the clouds began to thin. The steady tapping on clay tiles softened, then stopped altogether. And for a brief moment, the entire city rested in complete stillness. No wind, no traffic hum, no falling water, just quiet. Then morning began, not abruptly, not loudly. A faint wash of pale blue appeared above the hills. The mist that had wrapped the neighborhood all night lingered low, clinging to rooftops and drifting lazily through palm fronds. Inside the small Spanish-style house, Light slipped gently through linen curtains. Elias woke first. He didn't move right away. He simply listened. The silence after rain has its own sound, a kind of soft openness. The air feels rinsed, wider. Beside him, Mara breathed slowly, still wrapped in sleep. Somewhere outside, a single bird tested the morning with a tentative note, then another answered, then another. Los Angeles was waking carefully. Elias rose quietly and stepped toward the front window. The street outside looked transformed. The asphalt still glistened faintly, reflecting early light like brushed silver. The jacaranda blossoms scattered along the sidewalk were darker now, saturated by rain. The sky shifted from pale blue to soft peach, and then slowly sunlight reached the hills, first just a touch, then a wider brush, then full warmth spilling across slopes and rooftops alike. From their porch, you could see the upper edges of Griffith Park catching that first golden glow. Mist lifted gently from the trees like breath in cold air. Farther out, the skyline shimmered faintly, buildings along downtown reflecting morning light in quiet flashes. Mara joined him at the window. Neither spoke at first. They watched the way sunlight revealed everything the rain had softened. The leaves looked cleaner, the air clearer. Even distant rooftops appeared sharper against the brightening sky. "Smell that," Mara said softly. He opened the window slightly. Cool air slipped in, carrying the scent of wet earth, citrus trees, and something faintly oceanic drifting from the direction of Santa Monica. Los Angeles after rain feels honest, unfiltered. The city hasn't fully put its shine back on yet. It's just itself. They stepped onto the porch barefoot. The wood was cool beneath their feet. Tiny droplets clung to the railing, catching sunlight like small crystals. Down the street, a neighbor retrieved a newspaper from the curb. A dog trotted happily beside its owner, paws splashing lightly through shallow puddles. Life was resuming, but gently. No honking. No rush, just morning unfolding the way it always has in California. Slow, golden, generous. The hills beyond the neighborhood now glowed warm amber under the rising sun. Above them, the famous white letters of the Hollywood sign stood crisp against the clean blue sky, almost luminous after the night's washing. Elias leaned against the porch railing. "You can't tell it rained," he said. Mara smiled. "You can, you just have to know what to look for." The world felt reset. And perhaps that is what Los Angeles does best, not constant reinvention, not dramatic transformation, but gentle renewal. A new light over familiar streets, a fresh beginning without fanfare. They decided to walk. The sidewalk still held tiny mirrors of water reflecting palm trees upside down. As they moved uphill, the air warmed gradually. From certain angles, you could see the Pacific in the far distance, just a thin silver line beyond rooftops. The city stretched wide and open before them. Freeways began to stir. Cafes unlocked doors. A delivery truck hummed softly along Sunset Boulevard. But even as activity returned, something remained different. The rain had slowed everything just enough. reminded the city how to pause. They reached their favorite overlook, the one where skyline meets horizon. The view was clear now. Downtown shimmered gently. Palm trees swayed lazily in clean morning air, and above it all, the sky stretched endless and blue. Mara slipped her hand into Elia's. "Do you think mornings remember the night?" she asked. He considered it. "I think they carry it quietly," he said. She nodded, because that is how Lowe's Angels works. It carries its nights quietly into its mornings. It carries its rain into sunlight. It carries its music into silence. They stood there until the sun rose fully, until warmth replaced coolness and the world felt awake again. And in that golden light, the city did not look loud or demanding or restless. It looked peaceful, balanced, alive in the calmest way. Once upon a time in LA, two people learned that magic does not live in premieres or spotlights. It lives in rain on tile roofs, in piano notes drifting through open windows, in ocean waves folding patiently into sand, in sunrise warming hills after a quiet storm. Lowe's Angels will always shimmer. It will always glow. It will always chase something. But beneath it all, beneath the neon and ambition and endless movement, there is another rhythm, a slower one, a softer tone, one you can hear if you listen between the noise. And now, as morning stretches fully across the hills, as the air grows warm and clean, as the city breathes in and begins again, you can rest. Because somewhere beneath lavender skies and golden light, Lowe's Angels is whispering once more. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough. Good morning. And good night.
There's nothing else you need to listen for now. Just let your breathing stay slow and easy. If you're still awake, that's okay. And if you're drifting off, let yourself go gently. I'll be right here next time. Rest well and good night.